We're online, Chair.
Okay, good morning, councillors, officers, members of the public and press. Welcome to this final Planning Committee of the municipal year, which is a remote meeting that is being live streamed and recorded. I'll go to Joe from Democratic Services to do the roll call, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. When I read your name out, if you could just confirm that you have all the papers and that you can see and hear everything that is happening in the meeting. I'll start with, we have apologies from Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher with Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher substituting. Yeah, everything
yes.
okay?
Me.
Lovely, lovely, thank you. Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Brown with Councillor Brewer substituting.
Are you there, James? Has he frozen?
Yep. Yep. Sorry, I was on mute. Hello.
No problem. Councillor Buchan?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming?
Yes to all.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Howson. Councillor James?
I believe I have all the papers and I can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor Loynes?
Yes, I can hear, see and I have all the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Carl Richardson. Councillor Tony Richardson?
Yes to all, Joe.
Councillor Stokel?
Yes to all, thank you.
And Councillor Young?
Yes to all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We've dealt with apologies of absence. Any declarations of interest from members? No indications there. Thank you very much. You should have received the minutes of the last meeting, the 10th of March, separately to your reports. Has everybody received that first? That will be the first question. Anybody not received those minutes? No indications. Can we accept them as a true record, or does anybody want a query? No indications. They're accepted. Thank you very much. Okay, on to item 4 and number 1. It's land at Nelson Farm, and I believe it's Jane bringing this report. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Thanks, Jane.
Right. Thank you, Chair. The item begins on page 2 of the PowerPoint and that of members' handout. The site relates to land at Nelson Farm. The relevant planning history is set out in the report. The application was previously considered by Planning Committee in both August and October of 2016 and was minded to approve subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement securing legal obligations. In the intervening period following members' decision to be minded to approve the application, the Section 106 legal agreement has not progressed by the applicant. There have also been a number of events that are relevant to the consideration of this application since the application was first considered by members in August 2016. These include the revision to the NPPF in February 2019, adoption of the Hartlepool Local Plan in 2018, and changes in approach on ecology matters and the formation of a new planning committees, all of which need to be taken into account, and therefore this new report is required to bring matters up to date. Can you move on to slide 3, please? Right. Outline approval is sought for the erection of 50 residential dwellings with details of access, layout and scale being submitted as part of the application. Matters relating to appearance and landscaping would be subject to a reserved matters application. Access to the site will be taken from Applewood Close. The proposal is set out in full within paragraph 1.5 of the committee report. Slide 3 shows a colour layout view of the proposed site in relation to the adjacent existing residential properties and the proposed access, Applewood Close. The area of Sangs is located to the west and measures approximately 0.9 hectares, which is being indicated by the red dot. The site context is set out in full within the committee report at paragraph 1.11. Slide 4 shows a photo where the access is to be taken from Applewood Close. Slide 5, looking east towards Applewood Close. Slide 6 is a photograph looking southwest from the site access. Slide 7 is a photograph looking west across the site. Slide 8 is looking northwest from the proposed access point to the site. Also shown, if we can go to the Google map, please. Also showing the site is a Google map which shows the outline of the development in the area that's been shown here. It's showing the access point from Applewood Close and into the site. Thank you. The application was advertised in the usual manner, given that the proposal has not changed and is being brought back to committee due to the length of time without progression of the 106 agreement. No further publicity was carried out. Objections and comments that have previously been made are summarised in the committee report at paragraph 1.16. As a further update, and since the publication of the report, an additional objection has been received from a resident that had previously objected, and their concerns have been addressed within the report. No objections have been received from technical consultees as detailed within the committee report and subject to identified planning conditions and planning obligations. As a key update, Northumbrian Water and the Council's flood officer have no objection or concerns regarding the drainage subject to appropriate conditions. The main planning considerations are set out in full within the report. In planning policy terms and the site allocations and subject to the identified planning conditions and obligations, the principle of development for the current proposal for 50 dwellings is considered to be acceptable for the reasons detailed within the committee report. Furthermore, the application is considered to be acceptable with respect to neighbouring amenity and privacy, visual amenity, landscaping and ecology, highway and pedestrian safety, drainage and flood risk, and all other relevant material planning considerations as set out in the report and subject to the identified planning conditions and obligations where appropriate. With respect to any residual matters, these have been considered and addressed within the committee report. The office and recommendations subject to planning conditions and identified planning obligations being secured through a Section 106 legal agreement, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jane. Is there any questions from members? Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask really, my reading of the diagram, which is on page 3 of the handout, indicates that there is only one entrance and egress from for this estate, really, for this whole development. And I am a little bit concerned about that, Chair, because we've seen what happens when Throston Bridge is sort of closed and the road is flooded, or else that the whole of the headland is cut off. And I'm concerned that actually we're actually developing a similar arrangement here, that if anything was to happen in the entrance road, either outside of this development or inside it, the whole section would be cut off. And is there some way of resolving that? I note that there are 2 other roadways, but none of them actually come over the boundary line.
Jane?
Yeah, I mean, highways are happy with the access. I think Peter's available if he's got comments on the highways aspect of it.
Brilliant. Peter Frost, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Thank you.
It's not something we can insist on. We tend to take our lead from the emergency services, whether it should be emergency access, primarily the fire brigade, and they're happy with the plans.
Councillor James?
Well, they may be happy with it, but I wouldn't be happy if I were living in one of these rear properties and something happened to the roadway and I required emergency provision, because it's not really a close, it's a cul-de-sac.
Peter?
It is, as I say, we follow the planning guidance. In terms of the second access, emergency access, for a number of years now, we take our lead from emergency services, as I said, and they are content.
Chair, can I have my concern noted, please?
Yep, not a problem.
Because if something were to happen in this area in the future, I would not want my name as being that I didn't raise the question. So can we have that recorded?
Absolutely. Okay, I believe we have the applicant on the call, Mr. Litherland. Are you there? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's fine. You've got 4 minutes and you can start now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm speaking today on behalf of Mr. Colin Ford, who's the applicant, and I support the presentation that we've just heard there from Jane. This application, as you've heard, has been delayed due to a third-party drainage issue associated with the surface water runoff. I can confirm that this matter has now been resolved and that the applicant's ready to sign the Section 106 agreement. As we've heard from the officers, the Section 106 obligations have been recalibrated to take into account the new policies that have emerged since the application was last heard by this committee. The education obligations have been increased by just over £80,000 to £244,605, and the other obligations have also been agreed as per the original application proposals, meaning the total Section 106 financial obligations are in the order of £309,000, and that's on top of the affordable housing provision that's also as previously agreed. We note the 9 objections that have been resubmitted by members of the public, which are set out in the Planning Committee report. In particular, with regards to the traffic impact, the proposed development will consist of 50 dwellings. The council's parking standards will have to be adhered to, and we note that there are no objections from your highways colleagues. Just picking up on the point that Councillor James made there is actually a track that runs down the back of the site that's in the control of the applicant. So there's potential to create an emergency access route there. This layout's only actually indicative and in outline, so we could pick that up in the reserve matters proposals. Plenty of space to do that. With regards to flooding, we've submitted a flood risk assessment with the application that shows the site lies wholly within flood zone 1. If there are any localised overland runoff issues, then this application will actually improve on that, because the site drainage will capture the runoff water into its drainage system and then store it and let it run off at an appropriate rate. We note there's no objections from your engineering colleagues, Northern Marine Water or the Environment Agency on that matter. Regarding the impact on neighbouring properties, the indicative plans show that the 50 dwellings could be accommodated adhering to all of, and if not, exceeding the council's required separation distances. The planning conditions require any reserve matters application to be in general accordance with the indicative layout, and therefore, in our opinion, there'll be no undue impact on neighbouring properties in terms of loss of amenity. So to conclude, Chair, this scheme being located within or within white land within the settlement limits of Hartlepool and being included in the council's housing delivery programme, in our opinion, is acceptable in planning terms. There are no technical objections to the application, and therefore we respectfully request that the committee support these proposals. And I'm always happy to answer any questions that members might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members? Councillor James.
Well, it's not a question as such, Chair. I just want to pick up on the issue around reserved matters and to move that we do take that action.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
We're happy to accept that, and if you want to work out a condition, Jane or the officers, we can look at that with you. No problem at all.
We'll look at that separately. Thank you very much. Any further questions from members? No indications apart from my printer's just failed. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Edward, who is the objector in this matter. Mr. Edward, are you there? Mr. Edward?
Okay, I'm muted now. Can you hear me all right?
Absolutely. You've got 4 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Right, here we go. The area in question is Greenbelt land and was supposed to be part of the Cleveland Forest project. 2, the geology of the area is boulder clay, underlined with Permian magnesium limestone. This rock is notorious for subterranean streams and sinkholes, as we can see at Blackhall Rocks. 3, the area is crossed by a natural drainage channel, which drains from the area to the south as far as Hart Village, and to the west as far as the A19. There is probably a subterranean watercourse here, marked by a line of mature hawthorn and blackthorn trees, which soak up moisture and prevent flooding downstream, i.e. at the Seaview Residential Park. Flooding has been observed and recorded by residents on this site on many recent occasions, including January 2021, and photographic evidence has been sent to the planning department. There have in all been 13 flood events on this site between 2012 and 2021. I've read that the planning guidelines for a cul-de-sac and the maximum number of houses is 99. We already have 200 houses in a continuous cul-de-sac that stretches from Jaywood Close all the way to Applewood Close and includes Ravenwood Close. There is only one way in and out of this development. The implications are there for the emergency services, and there's been 2 examples recently of emergency services not being able to gain access here. One where a helicopter was forced to land in the site, which is currently programmed to be developed, and the other one was a fire engine that couldn't get through. The planning authority has permitted the development Applewood, Jaywood, Ravenwood closes without adequate provision for play, recreational areas, for parking, open spaces. With another 50 houses in a high density development, this will make the situation much worse. There is no reasonable access for heavy plant, construction equipment to develop the site. The area is used extensively for dog walkers. If this site were to develop, people would have to cross the coast road where there is no crossing, and go down to the beach where there is a little turn colony. There is no infrastructure in this area to support further development. No shops, community centres, bus routes near the area, churches, etc., etc. Development would destroy ancient hedgerow, which acts as a buffer against flooding. The area acts as a resource for dog walkers, protecting little turn colonies on the beach and so on. I've seen kestrels, owls, lapwings, peregrine falcons, there are bats, and I even informed there are a rare species of vole on the site. In the winter, there are many flights of geese heading south, which use the site to graze on. In a recent residential development, this side of Hart Bridge, Anglo-Saxon skeletons were unearthed. This site forms part of a geographical area, and a full archaeological survey should be undertaken before any development takes place. Due to extensive proposed development in the immediate area, with 570 properties approved in the Upper Warren area, we feel that there is no requirement for further development in the area. In addition, nearby schools are already oversubscribed and do not have the capacity to support further development.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions for the objector? Councillor James.
I'm having a good day, aren't I? I just want to try and pick up on a few bits and pieces that the objectors raised, because I think some of them are actually more than valid. Would there be an opportunity to actually put a zebra crossing onto the coast road with beacons rather than a pelican crossing, so that it's only really active when people are actually waiting to cross, and therefore shouldn't unduly delay anyone on their route to or from? Because I think that would be helpful in a general sense. I am concerned where I'm hearing about 13 flood events in the last sort of 8 or 9 years, which sounds quite horrific, really, when that level of flooding is taking place. So I'd like Mr. Parks to maybe respond to that, and to say what sort of mitigation is in place or is already intended. So I think that we need to pick up on a few bits and pieces there, Chair, and particularly the archaeological issue and the fact that there may or may not be a vole in that area, because I don't see anything in the report that covers anything like that.
Jane, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the archaeology and also ecology, there was no objections or concerns raised from the consultees with regards to this, set out in the report in their comments. And Natural England also had no objections. There is mitigation in terms of SANGs being provided, and there's also a financial contribution to go towards wardening for the protection of birds, etc. And that was felt that was adequate.
And about the zebra crossing, Peter, what's your thoughts on the highways issues that Councillor James has raised?
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the zebra crossing, we wouldn't be able to install one of those at that point. It's a 40 mile an hour speed limit, and they should only be on sort of 30 mile an hour limits or below. I mean, just a pelican or puffin crossings as they are now would be feasible, but given a relatively small development and slightly further away from the coast road, we didn't pursue that.
Councillor James.
Well, can I just say that I think we do need to pursue that and to find a suitable crossing arrangement if that's the case. And I accept on the mileage, on the speed, that a Belisha beacon type zebra crossing may not be appropriate, but surely there has to be something that would make that road safer. It may be that similar to what's being done at the top end of the Manor House ward, that we look at maybe putting a chicane in where traffic would have to slow down, stop, and allow the other traffic to move forward. I think that may prove to be a bit excessive, but we do need a safe crossing point.
I think we can agree to have a look at those options.
And can I just say, Chair, that whilst officers point to external positions that have been taken by our consultees, that does not prevent members from taking it into account. So to keep saying, well, you know, English Heritage or whoever it might be have not objected, doesn't mean that members cannot take into account what are material planning conditions.
Agreed. Dan James.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's just to clarify a point that's been raised a couple of times. In terms of the layout of the site, of the proposed development, which I'm just presenting on screen, layout has been submitted as part of the application. The reserve matters that would come forward only relate to the appearance and landscaping. So it's just to clarify the point that, as was the case when the application came forward a couple of years ago, this is the layout as proposed. So in terms of the reserve matters, that would only relate to the appearance of the dwellings and the wider landscaping. So just to make sure that that's sort of clear, that is the layout, the de facto layout that's been submitted.
Thanks,
right,
Dan.
can I come back on that then, Chair, please?
You certainly can.
Can I actually move that we actually condition an emergency access route as identified by the developer's representative, and that we put that in as a condition then, rather than to discuss the later point?
Alex?
Yeah, Chair, I think the key point with it is that there would need to be a justification around that in terms of being able to justify it in planning terms, in terms of this particular development. So we would need comfort on that, I think, from the highways people. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Well, can I just interject there, Chair? The developers' representatives accepted that there would be a way to actually put in an emergency route. Therefore, I don't really care what the legal position is. The fact is it's been offered, and I'm accepting it on behalf of Hartlepool Borough Council and the potential residents that may live in this development.
Okay, right. Right. Okay. So we will look to add that as a condition as part of the application outcome. We'll go. Dan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. From a planning perspective, we've obviously consulted residents and consultees based on the plan that I presented, and whilst appreciating the agent's offer of an emergency access, clearly at this stage we don't know whether that would require land beyond the applicant's control and beyond the defined red line boundary that defines the application site. So is the agent able to articulate a bit more what that would entail, because it's unclear based on the layout how that would actually be accommodated within the site, given that on the screen.
Yeah, Mr. Litherland.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's good that Dan's put that layout back up on the screen. There's an obvious point to the north there that I can see if you move the cursor, where there's a private drive facing north. If you move the cursor a bit further south on the screen there's like a hammerhead to the north where the access track is at the top. I think the emergency access could come through that private drive access there. We could take that all the way to the track, and then the tracks within the control, around there where you're circling now. Obviously, only for emergency purposes. Should an emergency vehicle need to get in, it would have to be bollarded off or something like that, so people couldn't just drive through it willy-nilly. But the access tracks in the control of the applicant towards the north of the site there, all the way down to the road.
Sorry, Steve, just to clarify, where I've got the pointer here, you're indicating that you would create an emergency point of access,
and then
it here.
Then the track runs east all the way to the A1086, course road at the bottom.
Councillor James.
Well, can I just say that I think that potentially that may be something worth discussing with our officers, but I think that we need to put the condition on. And another question would actually be, Chair, that flows from what's just been said. Would that emergency access route actually be able to be utilised for the development rather than coming on through the current residential area for heavy plant, etc.?
I think, Councillor James, yes, we could use it for development traffic. It's not appropriate as an access for the housing site when it's constructed. That wouldn't be appropriate, but certainly for construction traffic and when the development's completed, emergency access only. I think that route would be appropriate.
I agree with that, Chair.
Okay.
But it would alleviate some of the concerns of residents to not have plant coming through the estate.
Okay, we have general consensus agreement between both sides, and I'm therefore going to ask for those conditions to be included within the decision that's made today. Okay, no further questions there. There's no ward member to talk on this item. We'll enter general debate, although I think we've probably been doing a bit of that already. Any indications? None for general debate. The recommendation is for approval with the addition of the emergency entrance way exit to the top of the site. Sorry, I was using your map there, Dan. I was helping me navigate my comment. And for that to be used for construction traffic until the end of the development. Have I got that about right, Councillor James?
And it then becomes an emergency access route, Chair.
I did it the wrong way around. Okay. Noted. Okay, so the application has been recommended by officers for approval with the addition of those conditions, and we'll go to the roll call, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. We'll start with Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher. Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
4.
Councillor Buchan.
4.
Yeah. Councillor Fleming.
4.
Councillor James.
4.
Councillor Loynes.
4.
Councillor Tony Richardson.
Abstain.
And Councillor Storkel.
4.
And Councillor Young.
4. That application has been approved. Item 2 has been removed from the agenda by the applicant. Further details will be relayed in the closed session for members, so they have an understanding of what's going on there. Item 3 is 36 Butterstone Avenue. I think it's Dan bringing this report.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'll just bring the PowerPoint up. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Mm.
This item starts at page 28 of the PowerPoint and that of members' handout. The site relates to 36 Butterstone Avenue. In terms of the site, on the screen before members is the existing block plan of number 36. And as I move on to the proposed block plan, of which I'm going to explain in detail the proposals. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of an outbuilding, detached outbuilding to the rear, and alterations to the existing rear boundary, with the provision of door openings into the boundary. Both elements are retrospective. The application also seeks planning permission for the proposed installation of a first floor balcony extension. In terms of the proposals and on screen before members, this is the proposed balcony. The properties recently built by Persimmon Homes feature existing balconies which are recessed within the main integral fabric of the properties. This proposal seeks to create a first floor balcony that will be set on stilts, projecting out here. The retrospective elements of the scheme relate to a shed outbuilding structure that has been erected along the rear boundary, of which gates, outward opening gates, have been installed within the fence, which in effect open and allow views from the outbuilding outwards over towards the coastal footpath and the sea beyond. The next slide shows the existing first floor layout of the balcony. The existing balcony, which as previously discussed, is recessed within the main fabric of the building. This proposal seeks to extend that balcony with a first floor balcony that would be sited on stilts. So this is existing elevations of the rear and the side elevation. And as shown here, this details the proposed balcony, which would be set on stilts, would be decked out, and the applicant has recently added the provision of obscure glazed panels to the side elements, as shown on the screen. The proposed shed structure sits within the rear garden adjacent to the boundary. In terms of the elevation facing towards the back of the house, whilst the proposed drawing denotes the provision of doors, these aren't currently in situ. Following concerns raised by the Council's Countryside Access Officer regarding the current gates that open outwards over the footpath and the potential impact on pedestrian safety, the applicant at the request has submitted an amended plan which would show bifold doors that would concertina and open inwards to avoid this issue. The proposal is set out in full within the committee report, including details of the amendments sought and received during the course of the application. The application has been referred to committee due to the number of objections received and the part retrospective nature of the application in line with the Council's scheme of delegation. Moving through some of the photos that are on the screen, the photo before members is the current rear elevation of the property, and as discussed, this is the original and existing balcony situation. This is the detached shed outbuilding structure that's been erected in the foreground of the photo. Again, a view to the existing rear elevation. This is a view from the footpath looking towards the back of the rear of the property. As you'll note here, members, this is the current fence, which has got the outward opening gates, which had the application been deemed acceptable in all respects, there would have been a need for a condition for those gates to open inwards. And this is a view from the application site, with the outbuilding on the left looking back towards the rear of number 34. This is a view looking from the outbuilding towards the rear of number 38 to the north. This is a view looking inside the outbuilding, which currently houses a hot tub. Again, you can see the gates which are open outwards, which would be required to open inwards. Again, further views of the site context. A key note, as set out in the report, the outbuilding only requires planning permission because it exceeds the permitted height by 46 centimetres. Again, further views towards the outbuilding and a view across towards the sea beyond the rear. Again, this is a view from the coastal footpath towards the application site, to which the balcony will project out here immediately adjacent to the rear boundary of number 38. This is a view along the coastal footpath. This is the outbuilding in question. As a result of the difference in levels, the garden level sits roughly in line with the top of the wall, of which there's then a drop down to the footpath. So the gates currently open outwards over the footpath, and there would be a requirement, if the application was deemed to be acceptable, to open inwards. And again, a view from the coastal footpath, and this is the outbuilding in question, jutting out just there. So turning to publicity and consultations, the application has been advertised in the usual way set out in the committee report. To date, there have been 13 objections being received. 5 of these objections were received from Anonymous, where no name or address was given, and therefore only limited weight is afforded to these. It's also of note that 3 objections, where names and address were received from the objectors, such objectors requested that their details or representation not be published. All the objections are summarised in paragraph 3.10 of the committee report. 4 letters of support and 1 do not object response have also been received, and these reasons are summarised in paragraph 3.11 of the report. In terms of technical consultees, an objection was received from the Council's Countryside Access Officer with respect to the current siting of the outward opening gates over the adjacent footpath. As set out in the report background and proposal, the applicant has submitted amended plans which show the gates would now be proposed to open inwards. Concerns have also been raised to the proposal by the Council's Planning Policy section. Turning to the main planning considerations that are identified in the report, in view of the main material planning considerations detailed in the report, it's considered that on balance, that the retrospective outbuilding and proposed amendments to the boundary treatments are acceptable in visual amenity, neighbouring amenity, and highway and pedestrian safety terms, subject to the identified conditions, where applicable, to address the matters of the gates opening onto the footpath, and to apply that the gates and doors on the elevation of the outbuilding facing towards the rear of the host dwelling. Such conditions would have been secured with the need to implement these agreed amended details within appropriate timescales, for example 3 months, had the application been deemed acceptable in all respects. However, in relation to the proposed balcony element of the application, it's considered that the proposal would have a significant adverse impact on the amenity and privacy of the neighbouring properties for the reasons detailed in the report. The balcony element of the proposal is considered to be unacceptable and contrary to policies QP4 and HSG of the local plan. It's also considered to be contrary to paragraph 127 of the MPPF, which states that new developments should create a high standard of amenity for existing and future occupiers. Given that the council are unable to issue a split decision for such types of application, the application can only be recommended for refusal from an officer perspective. The proposal is therefore considered, whilst the proposal is acceptable in respect of all other planning matters, for the reasons set out in the report, it's recommended the application be recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair. I think you're on mute, Chair.
Councillor Stokely, are you there?
Yes, thank you. I think it'd be helpful if we deferred this application for a site visit. I would like to see how it affects neighbours and see the visual immunity and impacts in context of a physical site visit, if that is possible.
Have we got a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Fleming?
I'll second that.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, Councillor Fleming put his hand up, so we'll accept Councillor Fleming as a seconder. We'll go to the vote then, please, Joe.
Chair, just before we do, can we just be reminded of the decision that we took about 4 months ago on the restrictions on physical site visits?
Yeah.
This committee decided that we would step these physical site visits down at this time.
Chair,
yeah.
can I just support that position from Kieran Bostock? Because I believe that we actually have more than enough information in front of us to make this decision today.
Well, it's been proposed and seconded, so we'll go to the vote, please, Joe.
Okay, Chair. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Lovely. Right, we'll start with Councillor Christopher Akers-Belcher.
Against.
Councillor Brewer.
For.
Councillor Buchan.
Against.
Councillor Fleming.
For.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Loynes.
For.
Councillor Tony Richardson.
Abstain.
Councillor Stokel.
For.
And Councillor Young.
For. That'll go to a site visit for the next planning meeting.
Chair, can I make a comment, because I obviously won't be at the next planning meeting, so that it can be recorded and contained in the documentation that goes forward. because I wanted to clarify with the officer, to be fair, if the individuals had not put a shed that is 19 inches higher than it should be, therefore blocking their own view from their current balcony, then the extension to the balcony would probably be unnecessary.
We'll note that in the minutes, Councillor James. Dan, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just to pick up on Councillor Stokel's comments. Obviously, we've pulled together a dozen or so site photos, and it's just to pin down what sort of specific views members are sort of seeking, because we'll obviously go out with the video footage and we'll take that. But I was just it would be useful to identify which is the areas of question that members don't feel that the current photos show those areas.
I think for me personally, it'd be more from the footpath. With if I remember correctly, there was just one photo looking across down. I think a physical site visit would be much better to get the context for other neighbouring houses, as well as the impacts, what that would have.
Okay.
So are you saying we're seeing a lot of fence and not a lot of property?
Yeah, it's called electioneering, Chair.
Can we go through the chair, please, rather than just shouting out? Councillor Fleming, did you want to come in? Councillor Fleming?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. It's just all the objectives. I don't see the actual amount of the shed stopping the view. Maybe one on either side, but I can't see anything else after that. Like that's what I was a bit perturbed about.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Fleming. Councillor James.
I'll make my comment now, Chair, but I did actually point it to yourself. But I accept your position on shouting out, so I'll say it again. It's called electioneering, and it is actually outside of planning's remit to bring in political content. So I think it's a bit unfortunate that we can't make this decision today.
Noted. Okay. We'll move on to item 5. 5.1, update on current complaints. Have we got anything you want to bring forward, or you can speak to officers separately? No indications. Nothing else that I think is urgent. Can we have a proposal to go into closed session, please? Thank you. Seconder.
Seconded.
Thank you. We'll move into close.
If you just give me a second, Chair, I'll just stop the stream.
I was going to say stop the stream. If everybody wants to do my job for me, that's fine.
Oh, apologies.